both for Mozilla, and my laptop that I just bought for lots and lots of money doesn't connect to these projectors. So it's great that Apple makes everything right by being very close and actually not giving you a choice to upgrade the hardware and these kind of things. I'm really feeling the love here. So today I'm going to talk about HTML5 and the future of the web. And the problem with that is that this talk is being given over and over again. If you just look at like the future of the web or the future of HTML and YouTube, you will find that there's like 10,000 talks doing the same things. And I've been giving that talk about 5 times. Paul Irish, a friend of mine, has given that talk about 5 times. Everybody's telling us the future of HTML5 is soon to be here. And I think it's already here. And we just could finally stop looking into the future and just using the things that we have given to us by browsers. And the problem with most of these talks is that the normal flow of that is actually not very satisfactory. Because the normal flow of it is that actually I show you incredible stuff, and normally in a browser that's not out yet, or behind some flags, or a special nightly build that only I can get, or you have to download from an FTP server, you try it out later than at home, and then it doesn't work for you. And then you're behind in fixing your layout glitch in Internet Explorer 8 and your boss is actually on your back. Why are you doing this HTML5 stuff while you should be working? And to me this is actually not good because it means I'm awesome and you're frustrated. And why should you go to a conference and pay money to look at speakers to get frustrated? That doesn't make any sense to me. That's why I thought, let's think about that a bit more what we're doing here. So something is broken. To me, there's a disconnect between the people who develop for the web and the people who build browsers, or the people who actually advocate the new technologies of the browsers. While we define standards like CSS stuff, like JavaScript standards, people use jQuery and people use LESS and Sass and all these different other technologies that make them work today, rather than using the standards. A standard to me makes our life easier, but it seems to be not the case right now. But because people use something else than the standards and just complain when they don't work across different browsers. So there's a disconnect between you and the browser makers, and we don't even get the feedback that we want because people don't use the things that browsers provide you with. And the problem with that is that we love abstractions. As a community, as a web development community, instead of supporting the standards and giving feedback to the browsers, we build new libraries and we build new ways of using CSS. Every conference you will find at least 3 or 4 new JavaScript libraries, or you will find somebody telling you that you're doing it totally wrong in CSS. And the CSS working group isn't doing it right, and the standards are not right, and we need something different than CSS. So people use Ruby, all kind of things to actually pre-render the standards that should be defined. And it's one of those rock star things, you know? People don't want to just listen to somebody like me, but like be one guy and does that wonderful library that everybody uses. And this wonderful library changes every 3 months. That's the problem with these wonderful libraries. And they're not the production value that people say they are. Because everybody's a creator. Everybody wants to be that guy that is known to have done that one library. I mean, there's like 37 new micro-libraries and 10 new innovative CSS frameworks last year. And these are just 2 numbers that are just randomly made up. But it sounded believable, right? And that's the same happens with these libraries. People are just like, oh, I'm good, I'm great. I think we've forgotten the wonders of listening and learning. This is a wonderful picture of a child that has, for the first time in his life, a hearing aid in and listens for the first time in his life. Hears something that somebody else says. And we've forgotten about that. We always want to say things, we want to do things, we want to be the creators that everybody listens to. And we've got 2 ears and 1 mouth, so the ratio should be actually the other way around than we do right now. And sadly enough, we don't. I love this picture. And as Mozilla, we're doing a lot of stuff that's called web makers nowadays. So we're turning people into makers of the web. So journalists, elderly people, people who are still afraid of computers. We have these projects like Mozilla Thimble that allows people to build their first websites. What that is a text editor and the output next to it. And most of the time it's HTML pages that have errors in them, and the errors are described in comments. So people can read through that and change the errors in the HTML document and see the HTML document become better while they're doing it. This was in Tokyo, and this little kid was like in 5 minutes doing her first website and explaining every time what she does to the Firefox. And it was just the cutest thing ever. And it's beautiful to see that people get so excited about learning technology and we're so blasé about it. We're like, ah, this is all good, I'm really inspired, but I can't use it at work, so why should I bother? Well, your job is to tell us that you can't use it at work. So, on the flight over, I did not only kill my laptop, but I also watched the Lorax, the new movie coming out in the States right now. And there's this wonderful quote in that book by Dr. Seuss, the Lorax, which says, like, unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing's going to get better. It's not. And that's exactly the same in the web. And as a lot of people are actually getting older in web development, a lot of people have children, or know of children that they have, I thought it's a good idea to do the rest of the whole presentation as a rhyme that is like Dr. Seuss. So you could actually, if you read to your children, you're not getting bored with things, or you read to your nephew or your brother's children, these kind of things. And you can actually read a rhyme to them and learn at the same time what cool new technologies we have. And the rest of this presentation is homework. I want you to look at that stuff that is in there and find it out for yourself, because I can tell you as much as I want, you will not understand it if you don't read it on your own terms. You cannot teach people something just by telling them. I have to actually inspire you to find it out for yourself, and that's what we're trying to do. That's why I got Chris to agree to actually do that in a rhyme that actually goes one person, then another person, so it's not just me with a terrible German accent doing that thing. The whole thing is on GitHub, so you can read it out yourself and you can try it out yourself. It's also on my blog already, together with these slides, so you can download everything and use it yourself. It's Creative Commons. If you're good at painting, paint some pictures for it, because I'm shit at painting. And without further ado, let's go into the rhyming, eh? So I'm going to start with the first one, I think. Oh, do you want? Okay, cool. This is not good. Cool. There's a big web out there, it's huge, I tell you. It spans the whole world, but it was boring and blue.
In the shape of a fox. We have a little notes issue here. Then change came about in the shape of a fox. It was cunning and open, and it broke all the locks.
Others showed up and joined the good fight. A singer, an adventurer, and a shiny new knight.
These all played together and spoke the same tongue, which brought back old players to join them in song.
A standard was set, and it changed a few things. A richer web for apps was the promise it brings.
Ah, standards, who needs them? Some flashy one said, till a phone that was smart kicked them out of bed.
We moved past one standard as the web work is richer, so HTML5 and Friends paints a much better picture.
Things that are fun should be shiny and cool. That's why the new standards bring many a new tool.
Watching and hearing is what people like to do, so using audio and video is simple, and you can do it too.
Both of them are web native, which is a reason to clap. They can interact with other content, and Mozilla Popcorn makes that a snap.
If beats and frequencies are what you need to play, check out the Web Audio API. It gives you just that, even today.
To play nice with batteries, use Request Animation Frame. Don't let it stop you that it has such a long name.
3D graphics are thrilling, as gamers will tell. We now have that on the web, and it's called WebGL.
Water goes everywhere you pour it. Just ask Chris about his MacBook Air. Media queries allow you to be as fluid and respond instead of despair.
Natural movements are smooth, just open your eyes. With CSS animation, transforms, and transition, you can mimic this. Nice.
The web means you'll need to be online, I hear Smarty Pants gloat. Well, we have offline storage. So there, take your coat.
Got a cam and some friends, and do you want to chat? WebRTC is what you need. And even show off your cat.
Rhymes sometimes don't come easy, as you just became aware. So let's just move ahead quickly. This was too much to bear.
An artist needs a canvas, and HTML5 gave us that. Read, write, and convert pixels, all in the client. It's mad. Too long.
We don't have rich elements, many people complain. Use web components with X tag and create them, easy to maintain.
Passwords are tough, it is easy to see, so allow login with emails using browser ID. Ta-da!
The web is a mess with third-party buttons abound. Web intents make them pointless. Let's not have them around.
By design, HTML5 is forgiving. Its parser is great. It didn't want to break the web, so let's not break it in its stead.
Of course, you can write weird things, and they will work, there's no doubt. But will they be readable by others? This is what it's about.
You don't create for yourself or your friends who are the same. You develop for the next guy, so make sure you're not to blame.
You don't jump in a river if you don't know its depth. On the web, using Modernizer should be your first step.
Give new stuff to new players and use it to enhance. Don't support when it's not needed. IE6 can only walk, not dance.
With a vendor prefix, browsers tell you, this is not ready. So by all means, give it a go, but don't expect to go steady.
And those prefixes vanish, you mustn't forget. End with a prefixless version, it is your best bet.
So we ask you to help us build a web that will last, be future friendly and look forward, and stop building for the past.
The web is on phones, tablets, computers, TVs. We have to move forward, or else our existence will cease.
Hardware that is locked up is not what we're about. So check out Firefox OS. If you like the web, you'll like it, no doubt.
Last but not least, if you find something's wrong, please file a bug and tell us. This is how things get done.
So there you have a lot to play with. Check out and share. We really want you to do that. Come on, show us you care.
So well done for reading and listening and going great lengths. That's all we got time for. So goodbye and thanks. Instead of 45, we got lots and lots of questions now, which is wonderful. But seeing that my laptop didn't work, that I did rewrote the whole thing, I'm quite happy we still did it. So, any questions about all of that stuff? If you haven't seen what we've been doing there, and if I had my own computer, I could show it properly, but I can't, because I don't have my own computer. The responsive design demo thing is quite interesting, because you can see up here, this is actually Firefox Nightly, and it's coming in the next Firefox. So instead of having to resize your browser to do responsive design testing, you can do that inside the browser now. So the rest of your toolbars and the rest of your menus are all still available. So you don't have to resize the browser to 320 and wonder what's going on. It's actually happening inside the browser. This is a great demo by Opera called shinydemos.com. Norwegian humor, I think. And it actually has lots of cool demos, and it's a really good example of a page that actually changes according to the layout and according to landscape and portrait that you can do here. And funny enough, Starbucks is another one that just changed to a responsive layout. So this is the page as you normally see it, and when you once again turn on the responsive mode in Firefox, you can see that on a mobile phone it actually shifts all the things around and makes it much easier to read and much easier to sort out for yourself. I think it's really cool that a company like Starbucks cares about this, because they should not need to. Normally we expect them to have an iPhone app to download so they can shove more advertising in your face or something like that and control much more. But they're not really doing that at the moment. It's pretty sweet to see. See, this one, for example, is all of the demos are on GitHub as well, so the links will be available for you later. This is no CSS, this is just CSS transformations. There's no jQuery, there's nothing else involved. So all you have to do is to rotate that cube, is to put a class of top, right, or bottom on it, and it would do the rotation for you. In the same way, this 3D transformation I built for Firefox 10 back then when we started supporting 3D. And it's amazing what you can do just with a transition of 1 second on a page. It looks much more natural than it does before, because in nature nothing goes from one step to another. It's just like spiders when they attack you and things like that. It's scary for humans to see that. And these are all the things that actually are much easier to use. This one is an interesting demo because that's actually the toy cam, the webcam toy it's called. And that one uses WebRTC to access your camera as a video feed. And then WebGL will do all these renderings. So I clicked through that for like 20 minutes there, and it has like kaleidoscope, it has like color settings, it has all kind of funny things that in the past you had to write an application for, but this is just a website right now. Interestingly enough, on the newest MacBook Air, it doesn't work in Chrome at the moment because there's a driver problem with Apple. So when I looked for these WebGL demos, I actually tried it in my Firefox and it told me, oh, you have to download Chrome for that. I'm like, no, I just tried it in Chrome, it doesn't work. So please don't do that. Test for the support of WebGL and not for the browser itself. So I actually had to write a little proxy to make sure that I can record this thing on my Mac without having to resort to getting another machine to try that out. And it's incredible what you can do. You can see all these filters that some person has written, and I obviously had a lot of fun doing that. And this is all in the client now. That it doesn't need to be extra software. It doesn't need to be a plugin. And in the future we can do that, or not in the future, in the near future we can do that to chat with each other over the web. And I, for one, am really, really happy if I don't have to download a chat client anymore just to do some work, some talking. Google are actually using that for the Google Hangouts, the Google Plus Hangouts right now. That is one of the main technologies that they needed to have done. Unfortunate that it doesn't work on a new Mac now. The same with the Canvas thing. That was a demo that I've done quite a while ago, which is the browser fountain, and it actually is just a particle system that shows you how all the browsers fly out there. The Internet Explorer icons are a bit slower than the others, strangely enough. And this is what I send people when they tell me something can't be done. This is an example that you can actually do image cropping in the browser without having to do an extra piece of software. So this is just a canvas with some event handlers on it, and I can crop an image. The same way I can just drag and drop images into a canvas and create thumbnails from it in the client without having to use a server or a service for that, which is something that in the past we always had to do special things with. The Xtag stuff is really interesting as well. So that's something that Google has been promoting for quite a while, but the problem was it only worked in a certain build of Chrome. And now it's actually working across all the browsers because somebody, Mozilla, has written a JavaScript polyfill for that. And what it means is like you just have a little bit of markup, like X accordion here, and it turns it into this toggleable accordion that is keyboard enabled and actually works with assistive technology as well. So instead of using jQuery UI and instead of using YUI, Dojo, or all these libraries, you have that now built into the browser and actually backwards compatible to IE8 as well. And that to me is something we really, really need. Because the web right now is not an application platform, it's still a document platform. We don't have accordions, we don't have panels, we don't have resizable panels. But with the Xtag functionality, we have all that. So you can see just X flipbox with X car inside and 2 divs give you that functionality of a flipbox or a box that can shift left and right, and you don't have to worry about that. And it's all normal HTML. You don't need to change any attributes or anything like that in JavaScript. If you want to style that differently, you just say Xtag or Xflipbox in your CSS and it will be applied to it. even on Internet Explorer 8. That was really hard to do, but we wanted to make sure that that happens there. As we've got lots and lots of time, browser ID or persona is to me something that we really need as well. If you would quickly talk about it.
Sure. Chris works with the persona team, but I am the UX designer dedicated to that. Persona is basically taking a swing at what's been a big mosquito bite on the web, an annoyance, and a big reason that users on mobile phones download apps instead of actually using them in the browsers because it doesn't remember their login. So we're taking on this really nitty-gritty problem. Emails are the unique identifier, and we're making it easy. You know, it's not Facebook Connect because we don't want Facebook to own a very key piece of the web. We don't want them, a for-profit company, any for-profit company, to have such a key piece of the web and know everything. So we're not monetizing it because we're nonprofit, and we don't have to make money from this project. We're doing it because we think it's the right thing.
And the main thing is that keywords just suck. I mean, like on a mobile phone, it's not fun to enter your password ever, especially on Android when it automatically makes the first character uppercase without you wanting it to. And it's just, it doesn't work. I mean, like these are the most used passwords. I'm not kidding you. People really use password 123 to be more clever than using password. And I worked in Yahoo before, and I just saw all these data sets, and I'm like, really? This is what you store passwords in, and this is what you do it? And it's just unfair that every company out there has to come up and take your data and store it somewhere and then get hacked and all of a sudden lose their whole identity. So with browser ID, what you can do with that is instead of persona is the product, browser ID is the protocol under it. So to avoid that confusion. It's a JavaScript library right now that you just put in your page, and in 10 lines of JavaScript and one server-side script you have a login. And you don't need to know the password of the user, you don't need to know the username of the user. All you get in the end is an email address, and not access to the email address, just the name of that address for people to sign into your page. You make it as easy as possible for people to get started without actually bringing another CAPTCHA and another extra security layer in front of them. What you want is somebody who builds websites or web apps is for people to log in as simple as possible without having to give away their identity at the same time, and this is what that does. Because the problem with things like Twitter and Facebook is they're easy to log in, but you give away far more data than you really want to. I just want to log in somewhere. I don't want to give them my friends. I don't want to give them my last updates. I don't want to give them my birth date and my gender. But you give that away with these kind of technologies. And you normally slow down your pages as well as you do a third-party JavaScript implementation and these kind of things.
Facebook Connect is just not the right solution for every site. One second. My thought will leave my head. Because there are a lot of sites that it's really specific to demographics. You know, like Facebook Connect works really, really well for certain sorts of sites, but then other sites it's not an option for because their users have a very different sensibility. So we want to make something that's agnostic that can work for any product.
Yes, regarding browser ID, if all you are requesting to the client is an email, if I knew your email, what prevents me from stealing your ID?
You log in with your email. Your email is actually stored in the browser ID system itself, which is for now a service that we provide, but will later on be provided by the mail provider itself. So if you use Gmail or Yahoo Mail, then it will be, when you're logged in there, you don't even need to go through that process anymore. You still, there's a under the hood, it's a three-legged OAuth. So you're going in, you have to actually be inside browser ID, verified with that. You enter your email, you have an encrypted session from your browser itself, so I cannot get your email, I cannot just enter your email on another browser and verify with it. I would be asked to authenticate again. Okay. So it's your email, it's the browser, and it's the session at that time. And it times out in 20 minutes as well, so if you leave your laptop closed and you open it again, and half an hour later, haha, he's logged in, no, he's not logged in anymore. So we really thought about the security of that quite well. Just knowing your email is of course not enough.
It's a kind of cookie then. It's like first you authenticate and then you don't have to authenticate again. It's
not cookie based, it's session based on the service itself. So you have to do a request to the service every time you log in.
Okay.
So you verify much like you do with OAuth with Twitter. but without going through all the like, here's your secret and your hash key and all these kind of things. So there's a great example. I'm like, I don't know, it's not my computer, so I probably will mess up everything right now. But yeah, I will not do that. So on GitHub, there's a very simple example in my GitHub repository that just shows you in 10 lines of PHP how to do it.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah. This is something that is also fascinating to me, that with HTML5 we really made sure that the browser does something useful with what you put in there. We realized that people don't write HTML properly, which always fascinates me because I like HTML. I really like writing it, and I think good grammar is important. Like when I write HTML cleanly and I give it to the next developer, I don't have to explain myself to the next developer. The same way when I write a job application in crayon or blood, I'm not going to get that job, but I shouldn't be surprised if I don't get it. And you just put this in the browser nowadays in an HTML document, just the H1, and the browser will have turned it into an HTML head, body, and HTML, and put all these things around you just to make it work. And that was actually necessary, so we don't actually write new HTML5 and old browsers break. So it's incredibly forgiving, but what annoys me a bit is that people take this instead of a wonderful feature to make sure that the old crappy code that we have on the web doesn't break. People take it as an excuse to write really bad code nowadays, like, hey, the browser does it, why should I care? And you're like, well, we should care because the next guy is probably a homicidal maniac, who knows where you live. And I've seen things like that where people are like, look what I can do in HTML5, this is amazing. Like, LIs don't close them, the browser closes them themselves. It's much easier to read. And might be for you, might not be for the next person. A standard is there as an agreement between different people who don't know each other. Like the Phillips screw, for example. If we had not a standard of a screw in like furniture and these kind of things, you would have like 6,000 different screwdrivers at home, and probably not the one that you need at that time. So it's not that the browser is forgiving and we can do whatever we want after that. It makes much more sense to write cleanly and actually celebrate that the browser can still show the old stuff that we've written years ago that should not have been written, but we cannot replace it anymore. Because in the 16 years that I've been a web developer, I can safely say you never touch your code again. What you do wrong will stay there for years being wrong. And you all probably got some code from other people or some design from other people and thought, what kind of idiot was that? And it's really embarrassing when you see that it was you 4 years ago, which happened to me in some other company before. But we owe it to the next guy to actually build really cool stuff and really understandable stuff, and that's where things, as said, like Modernizer comes in as well. Modernizer is a great library to actually say, can the browser do this? And if it does, hey, I can use it now. Not just, oh, I use this, you should upgrade your browser because you're an idiot. You cannot tell people to change their computers. Most of the time they're not allowed to do that. And in the past, other companies have been very loud about this. I mean, it was interesting in the WebRTC talk at Google I/O, the guy said like, yeah, WebRTC works in Internet Explorer if you just use Chrome Frame. And you're like, yeah, if you install a different computer, then it probably works differently as well. That's totally fine, but you can't expect people to hack their computers just to make something work. We have to talk to Microsoft to make WebRTC work in Internet Explorer as well. And it will happen if more people use it. And that's a big problem that I have as a standards guy. I go up to other browser vendors, or I go up to Mozilla as well and say like, we should support this. And then like, okay, can you show me numbers how many people are using it? No. Then I go to you and say like, these are these really cool things. And your first question, does the browser now support it? No, not all of them. So I'm in the middle of these two discussions, and it's impossible to get out there. So please use this stuff and play with it, and play safely with it using something like Modernizer. Then we have a chance to actually build a web of the future that actually makes a lot more sense than it does right now. And
I have a question for Chris.
okay.
If a feature is in nightly today, when will it ship to prod?
That depends. If the feature is experimental, it might not ship ever, because it actually is an experimental feature, which brings me to this as well. But if it's in nightly now, the normal way is 12 weeks later it's going to be in the Firefox full.
And we now have silent updates?
No, not yet. Not on all platforms, but we will have silent updates sooner or later. And it's also a bit of a, we found that more people download and use Firefox is much easier. The whole oh my god, you have a new browser every 6 weeks, that's really confusing. That actually ceases to do. People are realizing that the browser gets better and better. This is another important part, and I'm sharing that with Opera and with Microsoft actually, that pane right now, that people do this. You have like a link with a white color and a MOS linear gradient, or in most of the cases WebKit linear gradient, from green to yellow. So on a WebKit browser, or in this case on a Firefox browser, that's a totally readable link. On Opera, Internet Explorer, this is a white button with a white text. And that's not good for the end user for some reason, because not everybody knows how to actually highlight the thing and read it. So the really safe way of doing that is actually, sadly enough, this. So you set a background color of green. So that actually means Internet Explorer 6, Netscape 4, everybody out there will have a background color and a text that is readable, that works for everybody. And then you start with the WebKit, MOS, NSO, and then linear gradient. Like linear gradient right now is unprefixed in most browsers, so this works now for all of them, and the others are not being applied anymore. But until this one is not supported, one of those will kick in. I know that's annoying because it's much more code to write than we should be writing, but prefixes, browser prefixes, are experiments. They're not things you should rely on. They will actually bite you in the backside once you try to do that later on, because a lot of them actually have been phased out. The idea of vendor prefixes was from the very beginning to try out new things and to see if you like it. And then people like them too much because they worked on the iPhone, and everybody has an iPhone, right? It's like nobody can afford a normal phone. So people really broke the web right now with a lot of stuff out there being just tested on one browser. And even worse, a lot of people just actually test for one browser and give you no site at all if you don't have it. And that's just best viewed with Netscape 4 in 800 by 600 pixels. We've done that before and it failed back then. So we talked quickly about Firefox OS as well. This is not Firefox OS, this is actually BlueToGecko here, which is the preview and it's my developer build. But this is a phone here that actually is a Samsung phone. And you can see here that it has the great code of 0000. And this is a normal phone like you would expect it. It does all the things it does, like you can call people with it and send text messages and all these social things that these things do for us. But if you, and you can't see it now because I've got the camera here, but if you look at this, the whole phone is written in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. There's no Java layer, there's no C# layer, there's no C++ layer, or whatever you want to put into another phone. What BlueToGecko, or which is again the product name, and Firefox OS is Firefox on top of a Linux core. So we took the Linux core that Android has, Gronk, and we wrote hardware drivers for all the hardware features that are in the phone. Because in the past you couldn't access any of them. You cannot make a phone call from JavaScript in the browser, it's impossible. You cannot access the accelerometer properly in the Android browser. In Chrome for Android you can, but it's still not an update that is mandatory for everybody. So with BlueToGecko, which is on GitHub as well, and Gaia, which is Telefonica's collaboration with us, we actually built these phones and they run 60 frames per second WebGL, so you can run beautiful games on it. They got full touch support. They got all the things that you expect from a smartphone, except there's no proprietary software in there. This is Firefox on top of Linux, completely open source. You can build the whole thing yourself on any phone that actually supports it right now, because the hardware drivers are sometimes a problem. And you can actually change that interface by changing an HTML page. So if you wanted to make a kid's phone with 3 buttons, call mom, call hospital, call a taxi, or call pizza, whatever, you cannot do that in an iPhone. You cannot do that on Android. But you could do it with that phone. All you have to do is build the HTML interface. What I'm working with in terms of ideas is like, if I put my English SIM card in there, it would have a different interface than if I put my Movistar SIM card in there. Because different things make different senses. Like, here I just buy a Movistar card that has data, but I don't want to call on it because it's far too expensive. So all calls should be automatically routed through something like Skype, which could be done in this phone, but it couldn't be done in any of the others. So we're working with Telefonica right now and with Deutsche Telekom and some other providers. And Telefonica told us that by next year, beginning next year, they want to sell a phone in Brazil running this. And this is not there to kill iPhone. This is not there to kill Android. This is there to bring web-enabled phones to people who can't afford iPhones or Android phones. And there is a big, big market in South America, China, India, where people are actually have the right to be on the web with their phones as well, but they don't have the money to be on the web with their phones. They use text messaging or like really bad old feature phones. And with that, we can get the price down to about $150 per phone. Because, well, we don't, Telefonica does because we don't sell phones, we just make the software for it. But it's just incredible that we can enable people to be part of the web just by using open technology. And for me as a JavaScript guy, this is cool. You know, I can actually make phone calls from JavaScript. I can access everything in this hardware that before that people told me like, sorry, you have to be a $99 Apple developer to be allowed to touch that phone. And it's just, that to me is something that we've done that needs to be done. We opened the web with Firefox, and now we open phones with Firefox OS, and I think that's very important. And I think we're out of time, won't we? Any more questions?
Could you please tell us about your feeling about PhoneGap and all these technologies that are wrapping HTML into fake applications for the client?
Okay, the question was what I think about PhoneGap, and you accused them of doing fake applications. PhoneGap is incredible, and Adobe Cordova, I'm really looking forward to what they do with it, which is the PhoneGap team now in Adobe. And but what PhoneGap allows us to do is right now use HTML, JavaScript, and CSS and build applications with it and make them run on devices like iOS and Android without having to go through their crappy browsers. That's the really cool thing about them. It's like Air was in the past. Air had the same promise. Like you can use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and build applications that you can install on your desktop and you can actually use on your desktop much like any other application. End users should not have to care what technology you use to build your application with. And something like PhoneGap allows us to use the web applications of tomorrow today because they actually wrap it in a native client. For example, the things that we've done here, all the hardware drivers like the telephony stack or the accelerometer stack, and PhoneGap simulates that for you. So you're writing it in JavaScript as if these technologies were available in the phone already for you, but PhoneGap then just routes it through to the operating system to make it work for you. And this is the step that we avoid with Firefox OS, but if you want to build something right now and reuse it on the web and all these closed gardens as well, then PhoneGap is a very, very good solution. Accelerated Titanium is another one that does it. Mosync in Sweden is another one that does it. It has a really cool tool called Reload, which is actually a node server where you can connect all your devices to your desktop and you basically code on your desktop and refresh them with one button and just see them popping up and see the native code on these different tablets without having to wire them up and do all kinds of things. Adobe Shadow does something similar as well. So I think there's a lot of good stuff being done there, and it's very important that we have tooling, because nobody should have to write things from scratch all the time. We have a lot of developers that come from Java background or come from iOS background and want to do web stuff now, and something like Cordova really allows them to do that simply without having to go from scratch.
It's going to be samples for developers for mobile, the component. Just to try to develop applications.
The application for Firefox OS will be the same as for Firefox on desktop. So there's an app store out there right now where you can start submitting them. It's the same as any other HTML5 apps. It has a manifest file, and there is in Firefox Nightly there's a simulator as well. So you could simulate it in Firefox Nightly, run in Firefox Nightly. Yeah, these are simulated for you basically, so you can actually do that. There's also Remote Tilt, it's called, by Remy Sharp. It's a JavaScript library that simulates tilting and movement for you, so you can actually use your arrow keys to simulate a phone being used. That's great for testing when you don't want to use your phone for that. But if you get a chance to do it, it's a lot better option. Right now, you need a Nexus S2 or a Nexus S to actually flash GucciGecko on it, and it's not as easy. But what we're going to do is as well, in Mozilla offices, we're going to have desktops where you can just put your mobile phone in a button, flash it on there, and try it out. And we're working on an idea of having developer phones available for like $150 to actually try it out and make it there. But as said, the main idea about Firefox OS is bring it to markets that don't have it yet, not to simulate what's going on here. I don't think we can afford Androids, we can afford iOS, and it's not necessarily the replacement for it right now, but it's a good idea to go for. And yeah, and the web. The other thing about this is WebRT, Web Runtime, which is something we work together with Google on, which is a frame set to basically build HTML5 apps that have full screen access and can be installed on OS X and Windows for you. So they would be applications that look like native applications on these desktop machines, but actually are just an HTML5 frame, again, much like Air used to be before it got discontinued or not really the love that it's supposed to have.
What was the Swedish tool?
Mosync is the company, MOSYNC, and Mosync Reload is the product. It's on the Apple Store. It's on the it's on the Android Store.
Okay. Second question: are you actually working with the European company like Telefonica or Deutsche Telekom, like operating on the US instead of like Malaysia, US operation? I mean, I see Telefonica do have the bigger market in South America, maybe in the US.
That was the main idea. We just came up with the idea and we said it's unfair that hardware is not available for us. So we need to build an operating system that actually gets this. And 7 months ago, this was an empty repository on GitHub. And now I've got a phone in my hand because Telefonica, funnily enough, had the same idea. So Telefonica wanted already to build something like that. So they then found out that we did it and were like, oh shit. Like, there's no way we can compete with Mozilla in terms of knowing the web and building things for the web. So they came up to us and said, like, can we collaborate on that? And they're like, here's the code, go for it. So none of the American big providers actually saw the benefit of that because they don't do much in South America and in countries where they can't afford and they make too much money with the other ones, I guess. But Deutsche Telekom were interested as well because they had a few interesting ideas with Android what to do as well. For example, they have a research product called that has a VM inside Android. So for corporations that would allow people to use their own phones, they didn't want the Android apps that actually are from the company to be susceptible to malware from the main Android. So they run a VM inside Android to run the company apps in there, and your main Android to have your own apps. So Bootto or Firefox OS could be another VM inside that. So that was the partnership there. We're open to everybody, but mostly the European providers so far were the ones much more interested in that. We'd love to have more. We don't care. It's open source. Go for it. You can do it. Make a startup. Make millions. Instagram, something like that. Yeah.
We were talking about discussions earlier. Do you think we can expect browser vendors to talk to each other a little bit more efficiently?
Well, we do.
Because sometimes you feel like, I mean, I know you speak to each other, but sometimes we feel like we don't.
Yes, it's a human thing. It's strange that. No, what really fascinates me about this is a lot of what's in public, a lot of what people from certain browser vendors say in public is seen as what the whole company thinks, and it's not. So don't get too excited when some guy says like, oh, Firefox are all shit, we're not going to talk to those guys. That's one person talking. So the real discussions happen on the mailing list, the real discussions happen in the working group meetings, and there's lots of stuff going on there. My life is sometimes rather miserable when somebody high up in Mozilla or, well, wide in Mozilla, we don't have high, wide out in Mozilla, actually says like, oh, this is what Mozilla does. And I'm like, no, you didn't agree with us on that. You didn't say that we do that. You think it's a good idea right now to say that. So make sure that you basically look around a bit before you say like, this is what Mozilla does. And it's incredible how excited people get making decisions for browser vendors not being part of that process. It's like 90% of the feedback that I get is like, this is shit in Firefox. And I'm like, okay, can you explain what's wrong? No, it's just broken. And I'm like, no, what is broken? What is going on here? Is there already a bug out there that actually says that? And I've sent them a bug and say like, look, we're fixing this right now. Yeah, but that's not good enough. Chrome does that and Chrome is awesome. And you're like, okay, then use Chrome and be happy. I really don't. I think the fanboyism on the web out there is just painful. It's like, of course we like our tools, but we can talk about hours about TextMate versus Vim versus Sublime Text and Tab versus Spaces as well, but we should do work instead. But yeah, talking to each other is very, very important in that. And I think it's very important also to give feedback that is critical. You know, not everything that Chrome and Apple brings out is great. And it's sometimes very important to say that as well. And sometimes it means swallowing our pride as well. For example, the Bluetooth Gecko supports H.264. So we play MP4 videos on this phone. We don't support them in the browser yet because we got the licensing issues still with that. But it was necessary because most of the video content is MP4 on the web. The same way we've got an audio API that wasn't different to the web audio API that Google is promoting right now. And yesterday I sent out an email like, I've seen what Google does with the web audio API. There's no point in us pursuing an extra API. Let's talk to them and both implement the same one, because in the end user, or the developer in your case, should be the one using these things and shouldn't be in the middle of a fight between two browsers. So you can exacerbate that fight by being a fanboy and actually just repeating what people say as the truth about a company, or you can help us by just finding bugs and actually talking to each other and saying like, oh, this is cool in Chrome, but actually what's even more important, whenever we build something cool, please build something with it and tell us how that worked. And not just like, oh, this is awesome, I would love to do that, but I don't have time for it. We can only validate new technology by seeing it in real production. There's no point in innovating, and we're getting very excited about finding out new things constantly that nobody needs. And that's what we called that XHTML back then. But it's, if you build something with the new stuff that we do, please tell us about it, because we want to know where you get stuck. And that's what our job is, to stop developers getting stuck. Cool, we're done. Thanks very much.